I think it'd be fun to talk about the biggest difference between Jim Harbaugh and Kyle Shanahan because they're the two most successful 49ers head coaches of the last 10, 15 years. Both have gone to the Super Bowl and lost. Both have gone to multiple NFC championship games. Essentially, their resumes are quite similar, except for Harbaugh took over a team that was talented and mismanaged, and Kyle took over scorched earth and built it himself. But they've sort of come to a similar point and have been unable to get over the hump, so to speak. But they're very different head coaches. Yeah. How would you characterize the biggest difference between them?
I'd say Jim is a little bit more hands-on than Kyle is from a leadership level, not a player to coach level. I believe they're equally as tapped in with their players as one another. But I do believe that Coach Harbaugh, let me show respect first. I believe that Coach Harbaugh.
You can call Kyle all day, but that's Coach Harbaugh.
I believe that Coach Harbaugh he comes with a very he's first of all, he's older than Kyle, so he has a better not a better background, but a more enriched background. Yes. I mean, Coach Harbaugh was the shit in the NFL at quarterback. He was nice.
First round pick. He was a first round pick.
He wasn't like some ancillary like Rudy guy. Like, no, he came in and won games, so one of the things about Coach Harbaugh that I've seen with him is that he was
a Pro Bowler in 1995. He started 140 games in the NFL. I mean, he started 5 playoff games. I mean, I think he went to the AFC champion. He went to the AFC Championship in 95.
Yeah.
Anyway,
I would argue to see if he's one of the most successful, most decorated player coaches, like coaches that's played. Like, So for Coach Harbaugh, I see that he's a lot more mature. He's a man's man. He's rubbed up against a lot of different generations. Yes. So Coach Harbaugh has not only players that Kyle looks up to as father figures, but Coach Harbaugh has players that he looks at as brothers that Kyle may look up to as uncles. Like, he's just older.
And he doesn't have that insecurity of like, why am I here? Like, I was in the NFL. I was a first round pick. I was a quarterback. You know who the hell I am. And I won in college. Yeah. I mean, everyone knows why he's there. He doesn't have to justify that. Kyle, it's like, well, why are you here? You didn't even play much in college. It's like, oh, your dad was a coach. Oh, your dad was a coach. So he has to overcome that the way I do. And I get that. It's a whole different thing. Like, I didn't play football. My dad covered football. Like, it's a whole different thing. So that's where Kyle's coming from.
And I see from Kyle is that Jim is a lot more comfortable in his skin when it comes to just the football game and being around the media than Kyle is. I've seen over the years where your dad and other people have gone at Jim and asked him very tough and hard questions, and
he loves it.
He welcomes the conversation.
Yeah.
You can tell the difference when somebody just has the right answer or they know, but no, Coach Harbaugh actually welcomes the conversation to see it through. It takes and when you see that with somebody who's able to take confrontations and turn them into conversations, I think that's a skill.
Leadership.
Yeah, it's very disarming. And that's one thing that
Robert Saleh can do that.
That's something that I wish Kyle would learn how to do. He doesn't know how to disarm people. He does.
John Lynch can do that.
Yes, because he's so defensive that he never gets a chance to work on the people that are around him. Right. So that's the biggest thing that I see from Kyle is that there are times where Kyle doesn't make you feel a part of the experience. He kind of makes you feel like you're on the outskirts of his orbit. You never really feel like you're having a one-on-one conversation with him unless you're talking about something that's favorable to him, right? And with that, one of the things that's beautiful about being able to bring on confrontation is that you get to show layers of yourself without being so forceful about it. People get to see you work through problems and roll up your sleeves, and you know how to work through issues. And some of those things are emblematic of, let's be honest, you're a head coach, so you're always being watched. And there's a lot of covert things that happen inside of your organization. So when you do speak, people glean a lot from your words and how you speak to people. It's like, well, if he can't handle this conversation, I wonder how he's doing that behind closed doors. I wonder how he's talking to other players. So that is the differences that I see between Jim and Kyle.
Yeah, and I feel like Kyle, like those differences put Kyle at a deficit that makes it tough for him to be a leader. Because again, like, why are you here? Oh, because your dad was Mike Shanahan. So for him to work against that, and he's been doing it for 15 years, he has to establish two things. One, he's a genius. Like, his background in the sport allows him to get you paid. Like, I know so much, I can get you open, I'm going to get you paid. So he's a genius, can get you paid. And two, he's your friend. He's Kyle. Like, hey man, like I just want to get you money. I just want to kick it with you. Like,
paid, bro.
I want to get you paid. Like, hey, but like, I'm not yelling at you. I'm not.
Slope, Grant.
It's a slippery slope. So, and it works for him, but it gets in the way of him being a leader. Whereas Jim just has to be himself because he walks in a room and it's Jim Harbaugh, the former quarterback, the guy who was the coach of the Niners and Stanford, and it's like he just has to be his quirky self, wearing those Dockers. He can be as weird as he wants, and it all works. But Kyle has to be cool. He's got to wear the right shoes. He's got to be. It's different, and so all of it leads to him not being a leader still. But he's a successful coach in a lot of ways. But I think that's the big difference. Like, Harbaugh can't not be a leader. He can't not be a leader.
It's in his DNA.
Kyle, it's in his DNA. I don't think that Kyle can be, but he works around it in a lot of interesting ways. I mean, his defensive coordinator is always just an A+ leader, from Solid to D'Amico to Wilkes. So he may have the self-awareness to work around it, but at the same time, you're the head coach.
I agree with you, Grant. And this harkens back to something that I brought up last time, is that being a leader is an act of service. And that's something that I do pick up from Coach Harbaugh. Coach Harbaugh gives me a vibe that you could catch him cleaning up the media room after a session if he saw something spilt on the ground, right? Mm-hmm. Like, you catch Coach Harbaugh bringing,
or he would talk to someone about it, like, "Hey, we're not doing this.
We're not. Yeah,
we have a standard. Yeah, we're not doing this. Yeah,
yeah." And I feel like, if you want to put it in a nutshell, which is very unfair, I feel like Kyle's players are in service of him, and Jim is in service of his players.
Sure. I think that's the way to put it.
And that's the biggest difference that I see between the two. I feel like when all else fails on Kyle's side, we're strapped to one man in a system. That's not a living and breathing thing, right? Yeah. So, but in Jim's world, if something is wrong, then there's people, there's a heartbeat behind that. You can fix that. You can talk to somebody about that. Whereas when you're trying to get to the heartbeat on Kyle's side, there's resistance because he wants to keep you in the binary side of it, of, whoa, the route wasn't ran the right way, or the pass was this way, or the drop back wasn't the right way.
I can't be wrong.
Yeah. And he gets into this binary static environment where there's no feel, there's no context, and you can't really get to him and say, but Kyle, that's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is your 7th round quarterback who's a rookie, who you use the backup tight end to block.
Right.
That's what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about the missed block or the formation. I'm talking about, why didn't you recognize that just from the minutia of how your team is running right now?
And a leader who is there to be in service of his players falls in a sword. That was on me. Don't blame Tyler. It's Tyler Kroft. He was inactive last week. He's a tight end.
Yeah.
Blame me. That's what a real leader does. Even if you don't even believe it, blame me publicly.
I think in certain ways, when you hear that from Kyle, I think that's what he thinks that being a professional coach is, and it's not.
Keeping it real.
Yeah, no. It's like, oh nah, well, it's like, no, you're missing. This is a blind spot. You're missing it right now.
You're talking like an offensive coordinator. I think what's interesting about Harbaugh, this comparison is, to be fair to Kyle, Harbaugh hasn't accomplished anything Kyle hasn't accomplished. Neither of these men have rings at any level. They are both on the quest for a ring, and they've both come very close. Like, Harbaugh was in the Final Four this year. Both in the Final Four this year. Well, and they've been in the Final Four a lot, these two guys. So I think what's interesting is they're offensive guys that always have great defenses.
Right.
And what Kyle has over Jim is a scheme. Like, I think everyone would say that Kyle's scheme, Jim doesn't even have a scheme. It's whoever his offensive coordinator is that year. It could be Greg Roman or whoever. But Jim has like a leadership and a cohesiveness with his team that just Kyle doesn't have. I think that's the trade-off. scheme
Yeah.
for leadership. Straight up. What's more
Well,
important?
I mean, our locker room runs this team, and if we're being fair,
Yeah.
we're talking about currently Jim and Kyle. Jim runs a college locker room. Those are not men.
No.
This is a pro locker. These are men.
That's true. That's
so
true.
They get to it differently. So we have to say that too.
Yeah.
Right? Those are 18.
Yeah, Harbaugh's style might not work long term in the NFL the way Kyle's laid back style does.
Exactly. So, and you know what? And that may be a feather in Kyle's hat, where Jim's voice and his message may have grown stale.
Or it's just abrasive, like, much. Every day. Yeah, a lot.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
Been way too much for the NFL. So maybe we're not looking at the fact that Kyle's style is built for the long haul. It's built for consistency. Right?
Because for a while, I mean, Harbaugh had to leave every place he went after like 3-4 years. Every freaking place. I'm amazed he's lasted Michigan this long. I heard he doesn't even talk to the AD over there. It's like, wow, I guess they found some type of understanding.
It's tribal.
So I'm not. So what's interesting about this? I'm not saying that Harbaugh's a better coach than Kyle because there's no evidence to point to that. But they are different. They are different. Yeah.
Yeah. This isn't better or worse. This is either or.